Now, we've seen last week how the nation of Syria, in fact, has fallen into the hands of rebels. You know that for 14 years, the government of the then President Bashar Assad was one of the most corrupted and cruel, actually, to his own people. We could see through the week on our TV screens the jubilation on the streets of Damascus as the people experienced their liberation. This fall was also a big blow to Iran, who used this country to provide arms to Hamas and Hezbollah. It is also a blow to the Russians, who have a strong presence in this country with naval and air bases. As for Israel, they do not seem to trust these rebels because since the fall of the Assad regime, the Israeli Defense Forces have carried some 500 strikes, taking out weaponry, fearing that they will fall into the hands of this new government. After all, you know that the leader of the rebel army was from a former, that is, Al-Qaeda, and he had a $10 million bounty on his head. He still has it, by the way. But now, what are some prophetic significances on the fall of Syria? Well, at this point, it is not completely clear how important this is. Nevertheless, it seems to follow a certain trend. The fall of Syria comes after the fall of Hamas and Hezbollah and the lessening of Iran's influence in the area. From our perspective, these recent events seem to be preparing the way to this peace treaty, actually the Abraham Accords, which the elect U.S. President Trump, who initiated this treaty some 4 years ago, promised to put it on the table again. So is Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who 2 months ago, when addressing the UN, spoke of the blessings of the Abrahamic Accord and intends to follow it. So we remember that this treaty was interrupted by the war with Hamas in October 2003. So the US and Israel are looking to revive this agreement. Now, already a few Muslim nations have already signed on, including Morocco, Sudan, Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, and at the time, both Saudi Arabia as well as Indonesia actually showed an interest. Why is Indonesia important? It has the largest, actually, Muslim population in the world. Egypt and Jordan already have a peace treaty with Israel, so everything is ready, actually, for that. And so could the fall of Syria and could this peace treaty, the Abraham Accord, that is, be an indication of the coming 7-year peace treaty that is to be signed in the future, a guarantee of peace that will be given to Israel, as Daniel the prophet and John in Revelation spoke about? It may very well be, for it will surely allow and give time for Israel again to build the third temple, which is needed for the very end-time prophecies to unroll, as mentioned by Daniel, by Paul, and by Yeshua himself in his end-time predictions. Now, what about Syria in the end times? Many prophecies see this country rising in the end times and taking part with others in the final wars, and at the end, invading Israel. Syria, or Damascus, will have a strong presence in the end time, mentioned by 3 different prophets, even more, but 3 especially. We have often spoken of 2 groupings of 10 nations, one of the war of Gog and Magog, and the other grouping would be the countries, geographically closer to Israel, as we read in Psalm 83. But there are other clusters or groupings of other nations that will come against each other and against Israel. And Syria, or Damascus, is mentioned in these groups. These prophecies are given by especially 3 prophets, Isaiah, Amos, and Jeremiah. We, of course, do not have the time to go into details, but I want to show you the overall. Okay, let's consider, for example, Amos the prophet, who begins his book by listing the judgments of the end times on 7 nations, including Israel. And the first nation that is mentioned in that list of 7 is Damascus. The prophecy relates to how this country will invade Israel in the end times, and the prophet predicts its full destruction at the end. A second grouping of nations is given by Isaiah the prophet, who includes many more countries, like it would be at Armageddon. And in chapter 17, Damascus is mentioned, and there also its final destruction is predicted as it will attempt to destroy Israel. Interestingly, right after Damascus, another country is mentioned, that of Ethiopia, which in history included Yemen, where the Houthis are situated, and who these past few days, have sent missiles and drones against Israel. Today we see it rising against Israel. There's nothing new, by the way, when you read the prophets. However, so far, what we've seen today is still far off from what the prophets are saying. But this is in preparation for all this. A third prophet, Jeremiah, in Jeremiah 49, mentions Damascus, who he sees again completely destroyed at the end. He also adds to this Elam, which is modern-day Iraq, who will also take part in the end times in the invasion of Israel, also along with Ethiopia or Yemen. Now notice that in these three lists, and also in the list of Psalm 83, two nations come back again and again, right? That is Philistia and Moab, who correspond to the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. Two enemies that are endowed with such an unnegotiable hatred that the Lord actually speaks as an eternal hatred in the book of Ezekiel. You know, all these nations seem always to be there, and they will be until the second coming. So today, while it could take a long time before the world gets to the time of the tribulation, on the other hand, it may also not take that long, for things can change very fast, as we have seen with Syria. We surely do not know the day or hour even of this, but whatever the case, one thing we can be sure of is that the Lord is completely sovereign over the direction of this world. Whether it is Yemen or Syria or any other country, it is no surprise, again, to the prophets of God. Everything is there. This is what the study again of prophecy instills in us: peace and confidence. Each movement of the nations of the world are closely monitored by the captain of the host of God, that is our Yeshua himself. And for this, we can sleep well. Everything is under his hand. Amen.